Global fans of Hallyu crave a deeper understanding of the culture and the people behind the wave. Learning the Korean language has also become more hip than ever before. From YouTube channels to the BTS language learning kit, there's an explosion of content offering creative ways of learning Korean. And now you can add to that mix a new board game that's getting ready to be launched called the Yangmal game, or Yangmal 장난 in Korean. So joining us this morning is the creator of this fun game, Ryan Kulp. He is here to tell us about the game, and we'll also get to hear the story behind his journey that led him here to Korea to pursue his game of becoming a K-pop musician. Good morning and welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, apparently you're not a stranger to TBS EFM, though. You've appeared on a different show, Uncoded. We're very familiar with that.
That's right. I've had a few fun experiences over there talking about indie musicians that didn't get enough attention that they deserve from the early 2000s, and working with Uncode through why I like those songs. And so I've really grown some affection for this building and my commute over here. Yeah.
So it seems like you have a big interest and big knowledge or experience in music as well. But how does... Okay, well, I guess we'll get into the game part later on. So tell us about your musician sort of career then.
Sure. So I grew up like every kid, listening to NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, every 90s kid anyway, dancing around in my room.
I don't know a lot of guys who would admit to that freely as you did.
It's next level. It's next level confidence. We listened to this,
Britney Spears,
the BTS of the 90s,
yes,
essentially, in America. And around the age of 10 or 11, I thought, maybe I like music more than I'm supposed to, and I need to kind of express it and make it. Mm-hmm. And I started playing violin and some other instruments. And then fast forward through my teenage years, I played in bands. I performed at least 300 times over those next 7-8 years, and realized like, I want to be a musician. But then I never made any money. So, 먹고 살려고, I went to college and got a job and kind of put it on the back burner, the music thing. But throughout my 20s, just to stay sharp, I continued writing, recording, performing a little bit, but just as a hobby.
So you were making music, you were performing music with musical instruments, you were actually singing as well, you were doing whole thing.
That's right.
Wow.
It wasn't very good, and it's still not very good, But, I've observed myself and others, just the human spirit, in general, we iteratively improve as long as we keep pursuing something.
10,000 hours, right? You're supposed to get better.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I'm at I don't know what number now, but I'm below 10. I'm above 0, and I'm just working towards, having the stuff I make sound as good as it should in my head.
Right. What did you study in college, if you don't mind my asking?
My major was marketing.
Oh.
And then I got into marketing at tech startups for the next few years after school, and then I transitioned from marketing into app development.
Well, that must have bought you some money, no? There's a little money in that?
Yeah, I got really lucky in tech startups. I started companies, I failed at companies, I sold companies, and then last year kind of put that aside and moved to Korea to just pursue music. And
that was my next question. And I mean, you seem to be having a very lucrative career in the US with marketing. I mean, obviously music was always in the back burner, but why Korea? And how did you get introduced or into K-pop?
It started last spring. I kind of decided I needed to get out of tech. It wasn't good for my mental health, and I was also kind of bored. It felt like I was doing the same thing every day. It's like, you have a bug and then you fix it. You want a feature and you send a newsletter. And that was kind of like it. Like the chase was done, I learned how to get customers. I learned how to make products. And I wanted a new challenge. And I thought, okay, fundamentally speaking, this new challenge should be very different than what I'm doing now. So right now I'm looking at computers. I want the new challenge to not be looking at computers. Right now I'm doing like marketing and trying to convince people. I want the new challenge to not involve convincing people of anything. And so I decided in general on language learning. Let's have that be the new challenge. And then the next step was, which language?
Right.
As an American who grew up in the South, and even then lived in New York and California, Spanish makes the most sense,
of course.
Logically speaking. But I never really enjoyed Spanish in school. I wasn't very good at it. I really hated, the quirks of it, like the feminine and masculine words. So I thought, what's another language? And the only one on my mind was actually Korean. Strangely
it's not
enough,
the first language that would pop into anyone's mind, though. Really, I mean,
for the average person, no.
American, yeah.
But I grew up in Atlanta, and I played in orchestra many years. And when you put all that together,
significant Korean community in
I was
Atlanta.
around a lot of Korean people.
Okay, got it.
So, I mean, I think I knew like 3 words. I knew like 이상해, like in high school.
이상해, that's your
Yeah,
first.
that's what, and I knew like 이리삼. And so that was just like barely in the back of my mind. Like I've always had this sort of nascent interest or awareness of Korean. So I chose, let's do Korean. And then when I started studying, before I came to Korea, I realized like, well, I'm a tech guy. I can work remotely. I don't need to be in Budapest where I was at the time when I started studying. So I came to Korea and to immerse myself, which is a whole other story because in Seoul, you don't really need to speak Korean.
Absolutely. What is it about Korean that appealed to you, though? I mean, because you were very specific in why you didn't want to pursue Spanish anymore. But Korean is very different language. I mean, we don't have the masculine, feminine, but we have the honorific. So that can be kind of a bothersome extra thing for you. But what is it about it that appealed to you?
Well, I've always kind of, let's say, unofficially been an observer, studier of music and genres and what makes some songs popular, why do they kind of catch on, just in my own opinions and observations. And over the last few years, we've all heard a lot of Korean music start to adopt English lyrics, even a couple words here and there in the chorus. And so I thought, maybe there's this way that I can kind of combine my skills and create something new. And so I've always found that to be true in entrepreneurship. You can have a mediocre skill A and mediocre skill B. It's at the intersection of those skills that you create something really interesting. So I thought, well, I've already done music in 100% English, and it's not amazing, but maybe if I can combine it with a few other things, it becomes something really interesting. And so that was kind of the leap of faith, I guess I took. And now I'm writing music that's kind of doing that. So we've got like English and Korean lyrics. The English rhymes with the Korean word.
Interesting.
And I'm trying to kind of tell this story. I've made a fake persona, actually. This is the first time I'm saying this.
Right?
Yeah.
What's your Puke's name?
Well, his name, he doesn't have a name yet.
Okay.
But he's sort of like a alternate reality version of me. So he's a foreigner that came to Korea. He's trying to adapt to this society, but still retain his own identity, right? And so all the songs are kind of like from this person's perspective. He's struggling, but he's also figuring it out. And so that's, I can't really say that there was a particular element of like the Korean language or the sounds, but I wanted a big challenge. I learned last year we need to have really big goals.
Right.
Our goals should basically scare us, and if they don't scare us, then they're not good. And as I've learned, like you mentioned, learning Korean instead of Spanish it was a foolish thing to think that masculine verbs was a real challenge. That's not a real challenge.
Well, the alphabet, they say, is quite easy to learn, right?
Right.
It's pretty straightforward and also easy to write as well, but everything else can be quite difficult. So how have you been learning the Korean language? Is it through a tutor? Do you go to an institute?
I've been learning
girlfriend or boyfriend. They say sometimes that's the best way to learn a language too.
Kind of all of the above. Okay. I went to a language school for 2 weeks just to try it. But most of the other classmates I felt weren't taking it seriously. And then I had several tutors. I still have a couple, and I have language partners that I meet with in person or online. But mostly it's just alone. So I do a lot of flashcards, and I use some really popular websites. And nowadays I'm more focused on listening, so finding podcasts and just talking to people.
What has been the biggest challenge, I guess, in mastering or learning Korean? What's the most difficult aspect of it?
This will sound silly and cliche. I suppose listening and the speed. I've gotten to the point, I know a lot of words. I can read just about anything slowly. But when I listen to different folks, I don't pick up a lot of, even if I know all of the words and I know all the grammar, I don't pick it up unless it's slower.
Yeah.
And when you try to slow down speech, you hear a lot of artifacts and it sounds strange. So finding that perfect kind of speech pattern. So as I've gotten to know certain friends, I can understand them a lot better than someone, let's say I met a moment ago.
Of course.
But everyone tells me it just takes time. So I'm trying to be patient and bali at the same time.
It takes time. It definitely does. I think with the language, it's a lifelong sort of learning process. And, you know, the challenge is to keep at it, right? And not get bored and think, that's enough. I don't want to do this anymore. And one way to make it, of course, more fun and kind of sustainable, of course, is to kind of make it into a game.
That's right.
But after learning about your sort of background, I would think you would come up with an app or an online game.
Right.
That would be the natural kind of progression. But your Yangmal 장난, this game is a board game. You've brought it into the studio. It's very kind of compact. It's in two little pouches. I don't know if one is
one whole
is a game. One
That's
has
right.
a whole game.
Samuri.
So, thank you very much. So why this actual physical kind of board game and not an app or an online game?
I guess a couple reasons. One, it goes back to my goal of not wanting to stare at computers and screens. I kind of got, I don't want to say burned out, but I sort of got burned out from coding. And as I've been learning the language, I've learned more about learning. And we're all so different that to write code that says if this, then that, and try to make that work with millions of people's learning styles doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I thought, let's just abandon that. Let's make something that kind of is fixed and see what happens. And again, it was another challenge for me to make a physical product because I've never done that before. So I made a prototype about a year and a half ago. I was in Texas at the time, and I used kitchen floor tiles that each weighed like several grams. So like a bag would probably be like 4 kilograms. And I just used a Sharpie, and my first game set was like 500 pieces. Now we've narrowed it down to 126 pieces by like a lot of iterations, and it's on cherry wood. But I started using it to kind of recall words. Because you can easily memorize a word, but the chance to use that word can be really rare.
True.
There are words I've learned like a year ago and I've still never used them or heard them. And I thought, how can we kind of flip the script and make it more of a challenge to use words that you don't need to use?
Right.
And a word game is a great way to do that.
Like Scrabble, right?
Sure. If you play Scrabble, there's always someone smarter than you in the room, and they're like key. The key QI is like the go-to Scrabble word for like the Scrabble veteran. And I think there's an opportunity to do something like that in Korean. So yeah, playing this with friends, natives, or learners allows you to kind of recall words, and it's kind of like a built-in flashcard, but your brain doesn't realize you're studying.
All right. Could I ask you to maybe pull some out,
Sure.
some of the pieces out? And as we're doing so, it's called Yangmal 장난, and I thought, okay, it has to do maybe with socks, but at the same time, Yangmal, is it the language of sheep? I don't know. I mean, that's a silly little joke that I kind of mentioned once before, but okay.
Sheep,
So
we could do that.
Where did you come up with the name for this?
So ever since I started learning Korean, I've always been a fan of like the 아직개그 and on the yuhi
There you go.
And you can even see here on the back says on the yuhi in kind of the Chinese way. And so when we were thinking of names, we thought let's make it kind of a built-in on yuhi. And so of course 말장난 or 장난, 말장난, that made sense. But of course, if you go on search online and you type in 장난, 말장난, what are you going to see? You're going to see billions of things like that. Let's make it like a not 이중의미, but like triple 중의미. I don't know how you say that. And so we decided let's Yangmal, like the sock, Yangmal 장난. And originally, actually, the packaging is going to be a sock.
Right, I was thinking.
Kind of something you could shove anywhere because so many board games are very big and bulky.
And just rectangular usually.
Yeah, and not mobile. We wanted this to be something you can maybe take to a friend's house. And you can't take a big cardboard board game. So we initially were going to do it in a sock, but we're still working on that. This is kind of version 1. So instead we outline
You would
sock.
think that the packaging might be the easiest part of developing the game.
I know.
Right, I mean.
It's everything that I thought would be quick took forever. Things that I thought would take forever, like making a hang tag, we did it in a day.
So I'm looking at the pieces, and you have the consonants, and you also have the vowels, and then you have some other pieces as well, which I'm not quite familiar with. Like,
So here's a song character. Here's Mium.
Okay.
And some of the letters are kind of, I guess we call them like freestyle letters. So this is U or O.
Or O, okay.
This is A or A. So
got
this
it.
allows you to kind of steal words from other players as you're going. And it makes it kind of exciting because no word is ever sort of fixed or safe.
I see.
A good example, when someone makes the word san, mountain, you can change that to sun, but you can also change it to not, the knife in the farm.
Okay.
And so it allows every word to kind of be fungible, and that makes the game increasingly kind of exciting as you go around and play.
I think a lot of listeners who are especially joining us through YouTube and looking at these very simple looking kind of pieces might be a little bit curious about how you actually play the game. And I know that sometimes it can be the most challenging part to explain how to play a board game. So I know with your background in marketing and technology, simply, simply, how can you explain it?
I'll give it a go. So the way you play the game, you need at least 2 people, and you dump all these pieces out of the bag. You flip them upside down, so the character's facing
So
your
you start
table.
that way?
That's right.
Okay.
And there's 126 pieces. And then what you do is you just go around in clockwise order, and each player flips one piece over.
Okay.
And once any player, it doesn't matter whose turn it is, once any player detects a word that you can make with the flipped over characters, you make that word and then you move it to your sort of position.
Okay. So what you did right now, you flipped over 2 consonants, so you can't
That's
make
right.
a word, so you'll have to wait
Nothing
for your next
yet.
time.
So they're just chilling. Okay, let's say that hey was a word. Let's say this was IE and it was sun, right? I can move this over to my position. Now I've just made a word. Every character is a point. So at the end, when all the characters are gone, whoever has the most characters wins.
I see.
But now I keep flipping again. And as we go, if we saw another character, let's say heck, again was a word, you can now grab that from me and steal it. And you can combine it into different words. So
I see.
as you play, you're kind of you have like 5 threads of reality in your brain. Like I'm waiting to steal this. I'm going to turn hyo into hyodo. I'm going to turn this into that.
So it's not simply a matter of making up words and having a lot of vocabulary. You have to also strategize. You have to be very
That's
kind
right.
of quick and be good at stealing stuff from your partners
Exactly.
as well.
You want to make words that are very hard to permutate into other words so that they're kind of yours forever.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's very fun.
It's something that you can enjoy regardless of your language level,
That's
regardless of your age as well. And I think
That's
it's something
right.
that you can all, and it's so compact, which I really like as well.
Very compact.
You decided to crowdfund this.
That's right.
Interesting. Is this from your tech background? And how did that go?
I'd say so. So we, sometimes people crowdfund because if they don't get some sort of funding, let's say you want to make a digital electronic device, you need some minimum critical mass of resources to get that manufactured wherever you're going to go. For us, we can manufacture in small batch or large batch, but we just wanted to, what I call in tech, get to the truth as quickly as possible. And the truth is people care or they don't. The truth is you made something that's interesting or not. And this is something I learned from. Yeah, if you go on crowdfunding, it's not just your friends saying, yeah, it's great, Ryan, it's so cool. And that's what happens to most of us.
I'll give you $1.
We have all our friends and our mom will always buy everything we make. But that's not the truth necessarily. So putting it on crowdfunding was our way of saying, like, what does the world really think? And it also is a great catalyst to force us to articulate the rules, to force us to articulate, like, who is this for? Is it for language learners? Is it for kids? So, our crowdfunding campaign goes a couple more weeks, and then we'll be kind of live and operating.
So the last question, when do you expect to see it out? When can we buy these?
You can go to yangmalgame.com and participate in the crowdfunding until July 22nd. And afterwards, yangmalgame.com will have our online store set up. And we began shipping some copies yesterday.
Wow. All right. Yeah. Well, I want to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
It's a fun game. Thank you very much for sharing it with us and sharing your stories as well.